All right, good to see everybody. Just finished up fall practice yesterday with Purple and Gold World Series. Productive fall. Credit to the players. We've been at it for 14 straight weeks. We start right when we get here, 8-hour weeks on the front of it with strength and conditioning and skill work and individual work, and just finished up our 45-day team segment. Thought it was productive. There was a few things that were really important. Obviously, we have a ton of new players. So building a concept of team with really good returners, a bunch of new players was a priority. To this point, we've done as much as we can, with that, and I think that was positive. Learning a little bit more about some of the talent that we brought in and what those guys can and cannot do, and then put them in a position to go work on those things on their own for the next month is something that was really, really important. We're still probably not ready to play a game, at least in my eyes yet. We were a little slower with a lot of things and a little bit more deliberate with things this year just because of the amount of young players, new players, those types of things. But the work was much more quality, and I say that just because the foundation of how we're going to roll was more set in stone, at least with half the roster, and led to a lot more productivity, and I credit the returning players a lot in regards to that. So kind of at a intermission point, or what I would call the fourth inning of the year, where these guys have to go and do their own thing. We're going to itemize what we want them to get better at, strides that they need to make to put themselves in the best position to contribute to our team's success, and they'll go do that right now after they get finals wrapped up and ready to go, and then we'll be rocking and rolling in January.
Lots of new faces, obviously, you said. What freshmen really stood out to you this fall then as far as making strides? I know that you don't like to single out players, but I'm asking.
Yeah, no, I think it's not that at all. I just think a lot of times there's more than one. So I don't want to leave anybody out, and that's certainly the case this year. I mean, on the pitching side of it, clear and far away, Chase Shores is the most ready to make a significant impact. I feel very fortunate that we were able to get him through the Major League Baseball draft, and I think the talent is easy to see. I mean, he's very tall, a lot taller than me, 6'8", something like that, but his body control, his athleticism, but the poise and the mound presence and the confidence, very advanced, for a player of that age. This is a big jump. So he really stands out on the pitching side of things. There's certainly more than that. We think Griffin Herring is going to be really good left-hander. We're trying to add more left-handed pitching to the program. His fastball was up to 93, kind of surprisingly almost, and then can spin a really good breaking ball. Him and Wes Johnson are working on some things that can maybe push him up to make a contribution earlier in his career than maybe you might think. Those are probably the two on that side of it. Aiden Moffitt has a big-time arm. I mean, he's up to 98 miles an hour and really showed some flashes. I think he struck out 5 in 2 innings yesterday in our Fall World Series. So that was great to see. So really exciting to have some really good young pitching, in the program. And those three guys kind of stand out on that side. On the position player side of it, if you followed any of the scrimmages, we got those guys a lot of playing time. Jared Jones has a lot of talent, is a big physical hitter with good ability to hit, not just hit for power. Had some success in those games, hit a couple home runs in the games against McNeese and Louisiana Lafayette. Paxton Kling's a terrific athlete. Center field, can really defend, can really run, has power, really all the tools, that you look for. Brady Neal did a great job this fall from a catching standpoint, a good left-handed bat. So, those guys are going to get opportunities to contribute. Gavin Guidry is certainly really talented as well. So it's exciting when you look at it. It's hard to be a contributing freshman player in the SEC in baseball. We played 12 of the 14 teams last year, counting the conference tournament, and there was only 8 freshmen that started against us as position players out of like 108 guys. Like that's pretty hard to do, and I think those guys have the talent to make a positive contribution early. It'll just be getting up to the speed of the game and having the ability to slow it down so their talent can be used. And normally it takes somebody pretty special like a Dylan Cruz or Jacob Berry or Kate Doty or somebody like that to be able to crack in. But I really think a few of these guys are going to be able to do it. And so we're in individual meetings right now and trying to itemize the things that they're going to need to do to be able to do that, because it's certainly not easy, but I like our chances of a few of them being able to contribute.
Hi, Coach. Right up here. Here, so with the addition of a bunch of new transfers, a bunch of new freshmen, I'm sure this fall kind of opened your eyes to see where you're going to place these guys. But do you kind of like tell them that, like, you know, your spot's not secure, you still have to fight for where you want to play and if you're going to start, because you do have an addition of so many talented athletes?
Yeah, I mean, there's a really good quote I like. It's like, success is not owned, it's rented, and your rent is due every day. Like, that's one of my favorite quotes. And if you're running a really elite program, which we're trying to do that here, that's a mantra. It's not like our mantra, but like, yeah. And I think, I mean, we can get some pretty simple ones out of the way. I mean, Dylan Cruz is going to play. You know what I mean? Trey Morgan's going to play. But I don't even have to say that. They see that in terms of how talented those guys are, but how they compete and really how engaged they are in what we're trying to do. I mean, they both have really unique qualities. I mean, you know, Dylan's physical strengths are easy to see, but mentally he's superb, you know, and Trey, and he's really talented, but he's so competitive and wants to win. And, you know, right now is bringing it like every single day. And so what you hope for is that the players that maybe are just, I don't want to say a step down from that, but aren't to that level yet, will look at that and they may not be able to take and be as talented. That's out of their control, but the controllable things that they can do those on a daily basis, then everybody starts kind of positively affecting each other and lifting everybody up. And we're not really in a place where, hey, this guy's going to go here, this guy's going to go. We're a lot further along than we were at the beginning, as we should be. But we're not to opening night yet. And I've always said, I mean, at game 12, you know, the thing looks different than it did opening night usually. And in the beginning of conference play or the middle of conference play or the NCAA tournament, you know, we had some pitchers that didn't pitch a lot for us early in the year last year that ended up being pretty significant contributors. So I feel much better, though, like about the pieces and how we can align them. And we have more options and flexibility as far as lineup flexibility, pitching rotation flexibility, to be able to do things that hopefully put us in an advantage. And you really, it's almost like a necessity now, you know, just because the league is good and will be challenged, which is great. It's why guys come here, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And hopefully we can get in the right frame of mind so they can mentally execute the things that we need to do to win, and then really stay connected as a team. You know, if there's two targets, I mean, those are the two targets, is help players learn to grow and really be able to, whatever mental game task they have to tackle to be their best, help them do that, and then make sure we're really connected as a unit, you know, and create synergy or kind of power and really being connected. And, you know, it hasn't been tested. We haven't had any adversity, but they're doing a really nice job of that, you know, and we're mindful of the things. And I always think leadership is looking out ahead of where could your trouble spots be, and if you can predict it, a lot of times you can prevent it.
Yeah, you touched on him a little bit. I mean, but Dylan Cruz is returning a National Player of the Year. Looks like he's playing a different sport at times. Just in what ways have you seen him develop throughout this offseason, and does he look like a different player than even from last year?
Yeah, I actually think there have been a couple small improvements on the baseball side of it, which is hard to imagine. I think he's not a good defensive center fielder anymore. He's an elite defensive center fielder, and that's awesome to see that. You know, about mid-fall, he made a couple of adjustments that he was doing with some approach things, and was hard to get out the last 4 or 5 weeks, or 4 weeks, let's say. which just shows you his quality. Has a really good plan for getting himself prepared for the season. So there you go. I mean, it's a guy that could probably rest on his laurels, do nothing, just the bare minimum is actually taking it to another level right now. It kind of reminds me of like a Kobe Bryant, mentality in that regard. And then I think the other thing that stands out, and he doesn't have to do it, but just how much he cares about the team and the leadership piece and speaking up and helping guys along. And it's kind of funny. We were over at Louisiana Lafayette last Sunday, and I was sitting next to him and Trey Morgan in the dugout, and it's like both of them were talking the entire time. I wanted to be like, who are you guys? Like, I mean, it's kind of awesome, to be honest with you. So that's something I really appreciate, and you won't find, one player in our program that's not pulling for him because of, how he operates like that. But it's a really good example in how he works and leads and all that, and using his voice more now too. So it's awesome to see.
I can't wait to see him talk. That'll be fun. You talked about having options in maybe ways last year that you weren't equipped to do so. Do you feel like you filled a lot of the holes, or are filling the holes, and that rent statement that you talked about will kind of take care of itself?
I
Care of
do.
the rest, I guess.
Yeah, I do. And I'll try to answer the question as best I can. I think that, when you're coaching and developing, I think for the players, like the best thing I can do for them is give them like the mental discipline to just focus on their job and the task at hand and be present and all that boring stuff that I'm sure you hear from all of us. You know what I mean? But it is real for them to reach their potential. But then, I'm the one person, and I really don't even love my assistant coaches doing it, to like look ahead to, maybe this year or the next year after that or the next year after that and say, where can we get better? And I think through development, and there's certainly really good examples of that you'll see on our team, Ty Floyd, Grant Taylor. I mean, those guys are really developing, and they deserve a lot of credit for it. I think Ty started kind of midway through the season last year, and there's a lot of credit to them and then to him. And then you add, Coach Wes Johnson into the mix and the wisdom that he has and the ability to connect and teach that he has. He's making a massive step forward. So it's a player that was on your team, but they're not necessarily the same player. So a lot of the holes are getting filled that way. And some of it you can't get through without experience. It's kind of marvel at, the football team a little bit. We have some really good freshmen playing for us and playing really well. And that's like outlier stuff, or like, Dylan Cruz or Jacob Berry or Tommy White being as good as they were in their freshman seasons. So we certainly are trying to solve or close the gap on elite with development and then obviously in recruiting. And I feel like we've done that. Now you have to go play and you have to go execute the play. But I feel very good about being closer to be able to do that with the way that we've recruited and the way some of these guys have developed.
Middle infield defense was kind of a point of weakness last year. I know that you started coaching the infielders in the middle of last season, but what have you seen from those positions? And is second base like a position that maybe we could see a true freshman? I noticed you also had Jack Merrifield playing a little bit of shortstop.
Yeah, a lot to that. I'll try to remember everything. Relative to their development, I think Jordan didn't get off to a great start, but he played very well the back half of the season. And it would be ignorant not to look at that and acknowledge that. And I think that speaks to him and his toughness and competitiveness. He made one error the entire fall. And he missed a couple games with the hamstring deal, but he was exceptional. And, I've had pro teams talking to me about that's what a major league shortstop looks like. And if you were around it all, you definitely saw you saw flashes of it at times last year, but you saw great consistency of it. He's healthy. He's playing low. I mean, looks like Brandon Crawford of the San Francisco Giants a lot. And really happy for him. excited for our team, because that will be great. Relative to the second base thing, I mean, we've used a lot of guys, sometimes out of necessity, just with not having a lot of depth, just in infielders, period, because of the Major League Baseball draft, moving guys to the position. A couple guys are out, moving outfielders to the infield. We'll see a lot of guys play that position. I think last Saturday we played the game, or Sunday against UL, we actually played the game straight up where, like if we pinch hit for somebody, we rolled somebody in and didn't, just mix and match like a fall game. And I think Jack, Ben DePolt, and Gavin Guidry all played second throughout the game. And you may see some of that kind of stuff. And they're all good players, and I feel like we can be successful with all of them. And Gavin Dugas missed the last 3 weeks with a eye procedure. I wanted him to get his eyes checked, and then when they did that, they went and found like this thing underneath his cornea that had to be removed, and so that was good for him. And so, he was doing fine as well. So, there's a lot of, and I mean, we had to throw Paxton Kling in there a couple times. I think Joe Bear played second base, which, it's not something maybe I would have had scripted out, but, try to get them under the mindset of you're a baseball player. You don't have to be pigeonholed into something. And I think there's a lot of guys that'll be able to get the job done.
Hey, Jay, regarding Tommy White's power numbers, the ACC put 9 teams in the postseason last year. He's obviously seeing quality arms. What are your expectations for his transition into the Southeastern Conference?
Yeah, it's a good question. Actually, I just met with him like an hour ago, and I'm doing individual meetings today and tomorrow. And we talked about that a little bit, and I think the benefit of us upgrading our pitching staff, I mean, he was the first one to say, like, this is better pitching than I faced last year. And I thought that was a good acknowledgement of him. And then we talked about the things that he needs to do to, let's just say, have the right approach or control his at-bats to be consistent. I think he's an elite hitter. I think the power really jumps off the page, and that gets a lot of attention, and rightfully so, because not too many guys hit, 27 home runs or something like that, 28 home runs. But he'd also hit 360-something, in a conference that was very good, and he did about the same. I mean, in the fall this year against our pitching. I think he had 7 or 8 home runs. So I'm enjoying coaching him on both sides of the ball. I think it's one thing, if a guy had that kind of success to come in and kind of say, got it all figured out. It's actually the opposite. It's, wanting more, early work, defense at third base, and he's done a very good job there too. Frankly, exceeded my expectations with where he's at from that standpoint. And then the hitting thing, there's a few things that I think, believe it or not, that he can do better. And he's been very open to doing them, and we've seen some good results. I mean, there was an at-bat this fall where I literally said, hey, I think this is what's going to happen, and if it does, this is what I want you to do. And he did it, and did it better than I laid it out. I was like, this guy's different, So he's been very, very enjoyable to coach, to this point.
Hey, Coach. One of the things that has been noticeable this fall is that some of the pitchers have picked up their speeds, including Grant Taylor. I noticed he also pitched a couple of pitches were 97 miles per hour. What have the pitchers done to improve their speed?
Yeah, I think some of it is just time and maturity. I never want a position player, pitcher, to come into our program and leave and feel like they regressed. And there's certainly a development component to that. I've said this before. I think when we got Coach Wes Johnson, we didn't get the best college baseball pitching coach. We got the best pitching coach in all of baseball. And that's a multi-layered thing. Like, that's not just – there's a lot of guys that do something really well in terms of how they develop. And there's a lot of good pitching coaches out there. I just think he's really complete in knowledge, and sometimes guys will get pigeonholed. Hey, he really knows analytics, or – the Rapsodo, the TrackMan, and can really, decipher what those numbers mean and put together a development program for a Grant Taylor that's going to help him increase velocity. He definitely can do all that. But then there's just a way to communicate all that and take the information and put it in a way that the player can be a good learner and understand, and then an ability to connect with them and do it in a way that it's a logical system that is inspiring, that gets the player to want to go, and then you see the results, and then everybody wants to do it, which is buy-in, which is the most important part of coaching and developing. So when you hire somebody like Wes, you have immediate buy-in. I mean, all those guys want to do is be a major league pitcher someday. Well, we just got a guy that was a major league pitching coach from a first-place team. That, earlier as an example, and you talk about credibility, it's like Chris Archer just came and hung out with us for like 3 days just because he was hanging out with Wes, and it's definitely a guy these guys look up to because of the impact that he's made on him. So I think the first part is there is a complete buy-in to what they're being taught. Then we have a new strength and conditioning coach named Derek Groomer, who came from Alabama, Birmingham, who is outstanding, like big-time outstanding relative to assessing the players, getting their body to be functional in terms of how they move down the mound, the things that they need to do programming-wise to execute that. So you put that together, and then you put together this pitching development plan. I mean, Grant's not the only one, in that regard. And then just there's more guys that can do it from a physical standpoint. You talk about Chase Shores, Aiden Moffitt, Bryce Collins has made a really good jump, so it's been exciting to see. And I think they're bought in, and they're just highly committed to what they're doing.
Jay, certainly not to knock last year's team, but what is this year's team going to allow you to do in terms of your coaching style and the things that you want to accomplish that maybe you couldn't quite do last year? Yeah,
I want to answer this correctly and truthfully is, I'm very proud of that group. I know what the expectations are. I know what the standards are. Nobody wants to win a national title more than I do, or be in Omaha more than I do. There's not one person in this community that loves LSU that wants us to do better than I do, I think. But I think those guys really got the best out of themselves, and I've always viewed my job to help them get the best out of themselves. And so I think we just had to really think creatively. And it doesn't mean that I won't think creatively this year, because I will. And there's already some things like percolating with myself and our staff of lining things up in a certain way, or thinking outside the box. It may not be in the context of winning 7 SEC games when you made a pitching change before the end of the third inning. I mean, that's kind of extreme measure, type coaching. But, on the flip side, there's always something that we can do to create a competitive advantage for having our team prepared. And we're always looking to find those things. So I don't know. I just think, you want to have the ability to match up in talent, and, when you face some of the pitching staffs that are in the SEC, and they're out there again this year, no question about it, we'll maybe just have a little better chance to match up, I think. And I envision probably more of our games being a little lower scoring, relative to, the competition we play, but then our ability to hold serve, a little bit better in that. And so then what is the game called for? And then it's about teaching your offense to execute in a way that we're going to hit home runs. Like, we're going to hit home runs on this team. But, that's not going to be the case always against the best pitcher, in the league or in the country. So ability to manufacture them. And actually, last year's team was very efficient at that. We were very good at getting runners in from third with less than 2 outs statistically. And it's stuff we coach all the time. So I don't know that it's all that different. I just want us to be prepared to win any type of game on any type of day, home or road, conditions, team, ballpark, doesn't matter. I just think maybe the ability to match up a little bit more straight up, we're in a much better position to do that from a starting pitching standpoint.
Coach, as you said, the expectations are always the expectations here, and I don't know what it matters in late November, but there's a lot of talk. This is the number one team in the country, and this and that. I guess some of your older guys like Trey and Dylan, they may not care about that, but with the younger players, how do they maybe get excited about the potential, but then at the same time realize we hadn't done anything yet and we need to work hard?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think one of my biggest jobs, we'll just call it with this generation, is understanding the difference between substance and image, hype and reality. And it's about the play. I mean, baseball is a unique sport where it's not the team with the best players, it's the team that plays the best that day. You probably already heard me say that before, and I know it's boring and it's not something that's catchy, but I have this saying too that we're never going to accept in winning what we wouldn't accept in losing. And so it always comes back to the play. And so we're always focused on the play. And then the things that really, really matter. Like, hey, I understand we were able to overcome this in this particular game. But, when you're trying to win at the level everybody here at this place wants to win at, we have to be awesome at managing all the details. And so it's trying to immerse them in that way of thinking or way of being, so much so that's that. And it's fun for all of you guys to talk about and write about, and it's awesome. It makes playing here awesome. But it doesn't really have anything to do with how we perform. Like, they need to stay focused on what they need to do so they can be the best version of themselves and we can perform. So that's kind of my thoughts on that.